So I remember a few months back, I was the dude who had like so many different ideas, so many different plans in my head. And I just had so much going on in my brain of what I wanted to do, of what I had in store, right? And I remember having a conversation with my dad, because I remember when I was also getting closer to Christ, I kept hearing a bunch of stuff like, oh, you gotta trust in God, trust in God's plan. But I didn't exactly know what it meant. You know, everybody tells you trust God, oh, let's put it in God's hands, trust in God, blah, blah, blah. But I'm always like, what does that mean? So I remember having a conversation with my dad, and I asked him straight up, and I told him, I was like, this sounds like a silly question, but I always hear this all the time, but like, genuinely, how do you trust God? What does it mean to trust God? And one passage that I've been reading a lot lately is the story of Joseph. I've been reading it for like the last week, I think. It's basically just from Genesis 38 to, I believe, 50. I think it's all the way to the end of Genesis, honestly. I'm like halfway through it, but I basically understand the whole gist of it. I've understood it before when I was a kid, but I'm just rereading it, and it's so awesome. Joseph's one of my favorite characters in the Bible. I love it so much. So I want to talk about Joseph's story, right? If you want a quick rundown on him, if you don't know much about him, Joseph was basically the son of Jacob. And Joseph was the youngest one up until Benjamin, of course, but for the time he was the youngest child. And there were times where he would have dreams, and he would tell his brothers and his fathers that and his father the dreams that he had, right? And they would get mad. His brothers got mad at him. His brothers grew jealous, and his father questioned him. His father wondered why he had those dreams or whatever. Eventually, his brothers began to become very jealous of him. They ended up selling him into slavery. Just imagine being sold into slavery by your siblings, the ones who are like supposed to be like this. They sell you into slavery, right? So off the bat, it's just an insane start to the story. So basically, when Joseph goes into slavery, he ends up getting bought by Potiphar. I hope I'm saying that right. And one thing that I really like here is that in Genesis 39 verse 2, it says, "The Lord was with Joseph, so he succeeded in everything he did." All right. So he got sold into slavery, but guess what? The Lord was with Joseph, so he got through everything he did. Fast forward to the story. Potiphar's wife tries to seduce Joseph. Joseph was apparently a handsome man, a well-built man. So Potiphar's wife tries to sneak up on him, tries to seduce him, tries to have sex with him. Joseph flees. He runs away, and Potiphar's wife ends up grabbing a piece of his robe from him. She grabs a piece of his robe and starts to spread the rumor that Joseph tried to rape her. Joseph gets thrown in jail. So he gets thrown in jail for something that never even happened, for false accusations, right? So imagine you just get sold into slavery by your siblings, and then you're getting falsely accused of rape, and there is nothing you could do about it. They both go through. You go to jail, you were sold into slavery. That's insane. Then we continue the story. Joseph is still in jail, and then after some time, Pharaoh ends up sending 2 more people to jail, right? And these 2 people, while they're in jail with Joseph, they end up having these dreams. Joseph saw them that they were super distressed, so he asked them straight up, "Why do you guys look upset? Why do you guys look this way?" And they told them their dreams. They told Joseph their dreams, and Joseph interpreted both their dreams. And both these interpretations ended up true. They happened exactly the way Joseph said it would. So eventually, one of the people who was thrown in jail by Pharaoh, one of them got back into the position he was in, and the other one was killed, whatever. That's the dream was predicted. So Joseph's dreams were right. He predicted it right. And the dude who went back with Pharaoh, he completely forgot about Joseph until, I think it was 2 years later, Pharaoh has a dream. He has 2 dreams. And when he tries to get people all around, magicians, all these sorcerers, all these people to interpret it, none of them could do it. So the guy ends up remembering about Joseph, and he tells Pharaoh, like, "Yo, this Hebrew slave who was in jail with me was able to interpret my dream. Let me bring him up for you." So Pharaoh gets Joseph from the prison. And one thing that I really, really love that Joseph says, we read it right here in Genesis 41:16. "It is beyond my powers to do this," Joseph replied, "but God can tell you what it means and set you at ease." Joseph knew that it wasn't him who interpreted dreams. He knew it was God. Joseph didn't take the credit for himself. Joseph was humble and said, "It's not me, it's God who can do this." From this, Joseph's message was well received by Pharaoh. It was well received by everybody. And from this, he became in a very high position in Egypt at the time. So he went from being sold into slavery to being thrown in jail to being held in a high regard. Long story short, his brothers end up going to Egypt to look for I think it was grain, I'm not too sure. They end up going to Egypt to look for something, and they end up bowing down to Joseph. And that was in the dream that Joseph had when he was a kid. Joseph had a dream when he was a kid that their bundles of grain would bow down to his. And now, years later, they are bowing down to Joseph. Ironic, because those were the same guys who sold him into slavery, who hated him, who were jealous of him. But because of Joseph's humility, because of Joseph's trust in God in that difficult situation, which it seemed impossible to get out of, he ended up on the highest position because he glorified God. He was humble. That's 2. And he realized that everything good about him, the good things from him, were from God, not from him. It is not by his power he was able to interpret dreams, but God. And one thing I really like as well is that you read it multiple times in the story of Joseph, that you read the Lord was with him, so he succeeded in everything he did. And think about it, right? He was sold into slavery. He was accused falsely of rape, and he was thrown in jail. If that happens to you, the last thing you're thinking to yourself is, God is with me. God, I trust in God. I'm hopeful in God's plan. Because be realistic. None of us think that. We don't not think. If my siblings sell me to slavery and I get thrown into jail, the first thing I'm thinking is, God, why did you leave me? Why did you abandon me? I'm immediately, and it sucks to say because we gotta be better than that. I gotta do better than that. But think about it. Joseph was still in touch with the Lord. He had faith in the Lord. He had trust in God when faith looked impossible. When he was sold to slavery, when he was thrown in jail, when these circumstances that looked impossible for him to get out of, when these circumstances that looked literally it was literally the lowest that he's ever been in his life. Literally, you could not get any lower than that. He still had faith in God. He still had trust in God, and he still gave God the glory, and he still gave God the honor. That is why God exalted him in front of the same people who were against him. In my opinion, there's no better story in the Bible about trusting God better than the story of Joseph. I love this story. Since I was a little kid, I've always liked this story. He was in the absolute lowest someone could be in their life, and he did not switch up on God. He did not say, God, why have you left me? God, why do you hate me? God, why don't you love me anymore? He knew that the Lord was with him. He had that faith. He still trusted in God. And God took him out of that situation. It took time. It took a long time. But he got out of it because he trusted in God. So what does it mean to trust God? When it makes absolutely no sense to have faith in God. When it feels like you're at the lowest you could be, because Joseph was quite literally the lowest that he's ever been in his life. That is what it means to trust in God. When it seems like God has literally left you, that is when your faith is really being constructed. That is when your faith is really being tested. And that is when you should trust in God the most, because of what he did with Joseph, from turning a Hebrew slave who was thrown in jail into the second highest command in Egypt. What can he do? So it means to trust God, to means to trust him in the hardest scenarios possible, when it seems impossible, when you don't want to, when it makes no sense. Gradually that makes no sense, because I guarantee if you were to tell Joseph, if you were to tell Joseph when he's in jail after being sold into slavery, if you were to tell him, yo, in a few years, bro, you're gonna be in the second highest command in Egypt, he probably would have looked at you like you're crazy. Because remember the dude who he interpreted the dream to as well? He forgot about him. 2 years went by and he forgot about him. So if you were to tell us Joseph, yo, bro, you're gonna be in second in command. If I'm Joseph, I'm looking at you like you're crazy. I'm not gonna lie to you, bro. I'm looking at you like you're insane. I'm like, bro, I'm in freaking jail. I was sold into slavery. What do you mean I'm gonna be? But Joseph had faith. And we gotta have that same faith, being to trust in God when it makes no sense, guys. Because he works in mysterious ways, honestly. I would have, think about it, if Joseph was in that, then let's say Joseph had switched up on God, that probably wouldn't have happened. I don't think that would have happened. What it means to trust God, it means to have faith when it makes no sense. When you don't want to, when things aren't going your way, when people call you crazy, when people call you stupid, when people make fun of you, and when people tell you that your God is a lie and that clearly he's not working for you, that is when you trust God. And it's hard, which is why not a lot of people do it, which is why it's not an easy path. It's a narrow path. But that is when you trust God the most. That is when you give God the glory and honor. When you want to receive the glory and honor for yourself, that is when you reflect and you say, no, it is not by my power, it is by the power of God. It's almost coming. But yeah, guys, that's all I gotta say. I got church tomorrow. It's 11 p.m. Pretty late. Read the story. It's such a good story. My favorite one. Yeah, guys, this was a random video too. This wasn't planned, honestly, at all. But yeah, hope you guys have a great day. God bless and take care.